I'll tell you sort of my own personal experience, and I think it's one that people share. I've experienced this with two people, Ayn Rand and Nietzsche. When I brought up Ayn Rand when I was in my early 20s, the number of eye rolls I got from sort of, like advisors and so on, that of dismissal. I've seen that later in life about more specific concepts in artificial intelligence and technical, where people decide that this is a set of ideas that are acceptable and these sets of ideas are not, and they dismissed Ayn Rand without giving me any justification of why they dismissed her, except, oh, that's something you're into when you're 19 or 20. That's same thing people say about Nietzsche. Well, that's just something you do when you're in college and you take an intro to philosophy course. So, and I've never really heard anybody cleanly articulate their opposition to Ayn Rand in my own private little circles and so on. Maybe one question I just want to ask is, why is there such a opposition to Ayn Rand? And maybe another way to ask the same thing is, what's misunderstood about Ayn Rand?
So we haven't talked about the philosophy, so it's harder to answer right now.
We can return to it if you think that's the right way to go.
Well, let me give a broad answer, and then we'll do the philosophy, and then we'll return to it, because I think it's important to know something about her ideas. I think her philosophy challenges everything. It really does. It shakes up the world. It challenges so many of our preconceptions. It challenges so many of the things that people take for granted as truth. From religion to morality to politics to almost everything. There's never quite been a thinker like her in the sense of really challenging everything and doing it systematically and having a complete philosophy that is a challenge to everything that has come before her. Now, I'm not saying they're on threads that connect. They are, right? In politics, there might be a thread, and in morality, there might be a thread. But on everything, there's just never been like it. And people are afraid of that because it challenges them to the core. She's basically telling you to rethink almost everything. And that is that people reject. The other thing that it does, and this goes to this point about, oh yeah, that's when you do when you're 14, 15, right?
Yeah.
She points out to them that they've lost something. They've lost their idealism. They've lost their youthful idealism.
Yeah.
What makes youthfulness meaningful, other than, we're in better physical shape?
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel, because I'm getting older.
Yeah.
When we're young, sometime in the teen years, right, there's something that happens to human consciousness. We almost awaken anew, right? Mm-hmm. We suddenly discover that we can think for ourselves. We suddenly discover that not everything our parents and our teachers tell us is true. We suddenly discover that this tool, our minds, is suddenly available to us to discover the world and to discover truth. And it is a time of idealism. It's a time of, whoa, I want to, the better teenagers, I want to know about the world. I want to go out there. I don't believe my parents. I don't believe my teachers. And this is healthy. This is fantastic. And I want to go out there and experiment. And that gets us into trouble, right? We do stupid things when we're teenagers. Why? Because we're experimenting. It's the experiential part of it, right? We want to go and experience life. But we're learning. It's part of the learning process. And we become risk takers because we want to experience. But the risk is something we need to learn, because we need to learn where the boundaries are. And one of the damages that helicopter parents do is they prevent us from taking those risks, so we don't learn about the world and we don't learn about where the boundaries are. So the teenage years are these years of wonder. They're depressing when you're in them for a variety of reasons, which I think primarily have to do with the culture, but also with oneself. But they are exciting. They're periods of discovery. And people get excited about ideas, and good ideas, bad ideas, all kinds of ideas. And then what happens? We settle. Mm-hmm. We compromise. Whether that happens in college, where we're taught that nothing exists and nothing matters, and start be a nihilist, be a cynic, be whatever, or whether it happens when we get married and get a job and have kids and are too busy and can't think about our ideals and forget and just get into the norm of conventional life, or whether it's because a mother pesters us to get married and have kids and do all the things that she wanted us to do. We give up on those ideals. And there's a sense in which Ayn Rand reminds them that they gave up.
That's so beautifully put and so true.
Yeah.
It's worth pausing on that. This dismissal, people forget the beauty of that curiosity. That's true in the scientific field too. Is that youthful joy of like everything is possible and we can understand it with the tools of our mind.
Yes. And that's what it's all about. That's what Ayn Rand's ideas at the end of the day all boil down to, is that confidence and that passion and that curiosity and that interest. And if you think about what academia does to so many of us, right? We go into academia and we're excited about, we're going to learn stuff. We're going to discover things. And then they stick you into subfield and examining some minutia that's insignificant and unimportant. And to get published, you have to be conventional. You have to do what everybody else does. And then there's the tenure process of 7 years where they put you through this torture to write papers that fit into a certain mold. And by the time you're done, you're in your mid-30s and you've done nothing. You discovered nothing. You're all in this minutia, in this stuff, and it's destructive. And where's holding on to that passion, holding on to that knowledge and that confidence is hard. And when people do away with it, they become cynical, and they become part of the system, and they inflict the same pain on the next guy that they suffered, because that's part of how it works.
Yeah, there's this happens in artificial intelligence. This happens when like a young person shows up and with like fire in their eyes, and they say, "I want to understand the nature of intelligence," and everybody rolls their eyes. For these same reasons, because they've spent so many years on a very specific set of questions that kind of they compete over and they write papers over and they have conferences about. And it's true, that incremental research is the way you make progress. Answering the question of what is intelligence is exceptionally difficult. But when you mock it, you actually destroy the realities. When we look like centuries from now, we'll look back at this time for this particular field of artificial intelligence, it will be the people who will be remembered, will be the people who have asked the question and made it their life journey of what is intelligence and actually had the chance to succeed. Most will fail asking that question, but the ones that like had a chance of succeeding and had that throughout their whole life. And I suppose the same is true for philosophy.
It's in every field. It's asking the big questions and staying curious and staying passionate and staying excited and accepting failure, right? Accepting that you're not going to get it first time. You're not going to get the whole thing. But and sometimes you have to do the minutia work. And I'm not here to say nobody should specialize and you shouldn't do the minutia. You have to do that. But there has to be a way to do that work and keep the passion and keep it all integrated. That's another thing. I mean, we don't live in a culture that integrates, right? Mm-hmm. We live in a culture that is all about this minutia and not and medicine is another field where you specialize in the kidney. I mean, the kidney's connected to other things. You've got to. And we don't have a holistic view of these things. And I'm sure in artificial intelligence, you're not going to make the big leaps forward without a holistic view of what it is you're trying to achieve. And maybe that's the question of what is intelligence, but that's the kind of questions you have to ask to make big leaps forward, to really move the field in a positive direction. And it's the people who can think that way, who move fields and move technology, who move anything. Anything is everything is like.
But just like you said, it's painful because underlying that kind of questioning is, well, maybe the work I've done for the past 20 years was a dead end, and you have to kind of face that. Even just, it might not be true, but even just facing that reality, it's a painful feeling.
Absolutely, but that's part of the reason why it's important to enjoy the work that you do,
right?
So that even if it doesn't completely work out, at least you enjoyed the process, right? Beautiful. It was not a waste because you enjoyed the process. And if you learn, as any entrepreneur knows this, right? And if you learn from the waste of time, from the errors, from the mistakes, then you can build on them and make things even better, right? And so the next 20 years are a massive success.